Hello, fellow town meeting members. Thank you for stopping by my video. My name is Paul Siegenthaler, town meeting member from Precinct E. I am proposing a bylaw under Article 40, a citizen's petition, to regulate the delivery of written materials to residences in Needham. The problem this bylaw seeks to address is the delivery of telephone books, newspapers, advertising materials intended for the residences of Needham, but that land on the sidewalk and are most often left at the bottom of the driveway or at the bottom of the front walk, sometimes on the berm and sometimes in the gutter itself. In inclement weather, these materials are left to molder and turn to mush. The plastic disintegrates and goes down into the storm drains and into our waterways, causing pollution. This is not acceptable in Needham, either from a quality of life standpoint or from a pollution control standpoint. The solution here is to create a bylaw that requires delivery fully onto the property. The papers down at the bottom of the sidewalk or bottom of the driveway or the front walk are too easily overlooked or ignored by residents. Most residents pick them up. The more inclement the weather is, the less likely they are to be picked up and cleaned up. Sometimes they are delivered in a way that it's not clear which residents they were intended for, and then who's to say whose responsibility it is to clean them up. But they sit there and they create this pollution issue. Any bylaw, the intent of any bylaw is twofold, but the primary intent is to create an expectation, to set an expectation with the intended audience as to what we expect from people within Needham. So whether that's picking up your dog waste as you're walking your dog, or whether it's removing snow from your sidewalk and not blowing it into the street, many of these bylaws, this one included, are rarely, if ever, enforced. I don't know that anybody's ever been fined for not picking up after their dog, but instead the bylaw is there to create that expectation that you should do this. And that's the most important, by far, the most important reason for this bylaw, is to create the expectation that it is unacceptable to leave these things in the street, on the public way, or on the sidewalk. They have to be on the intended recipient's property. There's a question about enforcement. We'll leave enforcement up to the discretion of our professional police department, just as with all these other bylaws. Again, riding bicycles on the sidewalk in the center of town, picking up after your dog, shoveling snow. The police can decide whether the harm and the complaints are worthy of enforcement. But for the most part, we don't worry about that. We worry about setting that expectation so that there won't be a need for enforcement. The question that has come up is this needed? We all know, or perhaps you know, that the Needham Times has announced that they will no longer be printing their paper. They're going to a digital. That still leaves telephone books and advertising materials, which I have seen within the last 12 months in my neighborhood on the sidewalks. There's also no reason to believe that another print newspaper couldn't fill the hole left by the Needham Times. Or perhaps Hometown Weekly decides the Postal Service is too expensive now and decides to go to delivery. The important thing is that when this happens, there will be a bylaw on the books that says we expect these materials to be delivered onto the property, not on the sidewalk in front. And by setting that expectation, the newcomer or the delivery entity can decide how should they handle this, but at least they know what we're expecting. There is no downside to this bylaw. If nothing replaces the Needham Times, we're still controlling the phone books, we're still controlling advertising materials. And if nothing ever gets delivered, there's no harm on the bylaw. It hasn't created any issue. But it does set that expectation, which is all important. And I know I'm repeating myself there, but it's all important. So I think the concern of the town is enforcement. I don't believe that should be a concern. I think that's a non-issue. We do, in fact, have a litter law, 2.5.2 bylaw, that says you're not allowed to leave litter on the public way. The gray area here is this considered litter? If it's unwanted material, you could argue that it is litter. Or clearly, the town hasn't enforced it. The delivery people continue to throw it on the sidewalk. They don't think it's litter. So this bylaw will definitely clarify that issue and say, this is what you need to do. There was some discussion at the select board about boxes. There's a reference to the box, to a potential box in the bylaw. It is misdescribed, if that's a term. It's misdescribed in the warrant description as mailboxes. You cannot deliver to mailboxes. However, there are places, I don't know that they exist in Needham, but there are places where there's a separate delivery box, usually for a local paper. There's a delivery box on the property. The only intent here is to grandfather those in to make sure that if somebody does have one of those boxes, they don't have to take it down. It can be used because it is containing these written materials that we want to control. I don't think there's any likelihood that somebody's going to go out and put up a bunch of boxes, although that would not be illegal, even with or without this bylaw. That would not be illegal if somebody wanted to do that. And so the box issue really is just to grandfather those in. There's also some question about inconvenience to the delivery drivers. Well, quite frankly, a lot of bylaws require inconvenience. It's inconvenient to pick up after your dog. It's inconvenient to make sure your snow blows off the sidewalk and onto your yard. A little inconvenience where they need to slow down and make sure that the delivery is fully on the property is a small price to pay to keep our waterways clean. We're not asking them to get out of their car and go up and put it inside the screen door. We are simply saying, make sure it's all the way on the property. There was some discussion also as to why 15 feet. 15 feet is really designed because our current setback, front yard setback, is 20 feet from the street. And so if you put it exactly 15 feet into the property, that's 5 feet from a house that has got the 20-foot setback. In reality, most of our houses are either closer or further away, and that's why the law is written so that it has to be at least 15 feet or no more than 5 feet from the house. So if it's further away, they get 15 feet on the property, they're fine, even if it's 30 feet from the house. If the house is right up on the street, they get it within 5 feet of the house, that's fine, even if it's not 15 feet off the public way. So to summarize, there is no downside to this bylaw. There is no need to go out and create enforcement. There is no need to incur expense. One could argue we will save money because when these are in the public way, whose responsibility is it to clean them up? You would argue the town should be cleaning them up, and we obviously aren't going to allocate funds specifically for that. So there is no expense to the town here. There is no enforcement requirement. Every bylaw needs enforcement provisions to have some teeth, but the likelihood of this being enforced and in a great manner is unlikely, but it does set that expectation. The most important thing is this sets the expectation for the delivery of written materials to the residents of the town, and will hopefully go a long way towards beautifying our streets and keeping our waterways clean. I appreciate your listening to this video. I very much appreciate your support on Article 40, creating a bylaw to manage the delivery of written materials to the residents of Needham. Thank you for listening. I'll see you at town meeting.